right, welcome to another new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 268.
Damn.
Yeah. And my name is Steve.
I'm Ronald.
And that's Ronald. And
My name is John.
That's John. And we are here for a brand spanking new episode of Movie Schmovie. Another really exciting episode of Movie Schmovie. I got to say, we've got quite the run going. We got 3 out of 4 episodes of our last releases have been pertaining to an exciting new era in Movie Schmovie world where we've kind of gotten our foot in the door of being able to review some stuff before they actually come out. Like, you know, we used to go to some screenings every once in a while and be able to do this when there were still movie theaters open that we were willing to go to in a pre-pandemic era. But in the world that we live in now, we've started to get some relationships going with some network studios, and some have been kind enough to let us check out their original content. And this week, I'm very excited, and I was very excited when they gave us the green light on this to have the ability to review and screen and be able to talk about Season 2, Part 1 of Hulu's original series, Pen 15.
And by part 1, it's a planned 14-episode second season,
right.
And we saw the first 7 episodes. But I think that's what this initial run is going to be, right? Is it going to be like split by time in some way? Okay.
Yeah, so the first 7 come up. So next Friday, you'll be able to watch this on Hulu on the 18th. The first 7 episodes, which they're calling Part 1, and then Part 2, which is the back 7, will come out at an undetermined time in 2021.
So it's dropping 7 and 7, though. It's not weekly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So we can give a little bit of a overview. I mean, if we talk about things over the course of these 7 episodes, viewers will be able to dive right in with that. They won't be waiting almost 2 months to see what we've seen. That's cool. No, it's I mentioned last week when we kind of teased this episode that Pen 15 Season 1 was one where I saw the first couple episodes and really liked it, maybe first 3, and it just kind of fell off my radar or something. I don't know why I didn't finish it, and I didn't realize I hadn't finished Season 1 until I got into Season 2. In that opening, there's a little previously on montage, and I was like, wait, I don't remember seeing all this, and I was a little worried, like, okay, I guess I'll make it be almost part of my critique of this show is how much can you sort of jump in and not know all of the plot mechanics that have gotten us to this point. And I think it's a real testament to the show that stuff really didn't matter that much, that almost within an episode, they're off to a specific place that you could understand if you just get the idea that it's awkward adolescence and it's tweendom filtered through specifically like being a tween around the year 2000 kind of, which is when this thing is set. It's highly relatable, and it's such a weird experiment, and the fact that it works at all and in fact is emotionally resonant. Let's talk a little bit about what this show is to people who might not even know what Pen 15 is. Ronald, explain the concept.
Sure. So it's about 2 characters, Maya and Anna, who are best friends, just trying to figure it out. And they're in middle school, I guess, when we first are brought into.
They're in 7th grade.
Yes, 7th grade. And the device that they use is that they're played by adult actors in a world of actual child actors. So 2 adults, all other actors are kid actors in this world.
And they look like kids. They look like 12 and 13-year-olds.
Yes.
It doesn't look like ambiguous like teen. It's like, no, these are kids.
They are going for it, man. And there's a commitment to being these characters that really, you know, maybe for the first 5 minutes of seeing it for the first time ever, you're kind of like, what the hell is going on? But when you see it start, it's very evident that it's probably one of the better devices for a coming-of-age show that I've ever seen. And it works really well. And seeing an adult falling in love with a kid, it sounds so strange on paper, man, but it works so damn well. The characters are so likable. And it reminds me of some middle school was so awkward and so awkward. And it just does it better than anything I've ever seen, man. Like I was trying to think about Wonder Years and things like that, which are great shows, but nothing quite does it like this show. Nothing quite digs into the awkwardness and the horror of some of the things that can happen in middle school.
So why does that work so well? Why does having women in their, I don't know, early 30s, I guess, might be their ages, the actresses Maya Erskine and Anna Konkle, who both co-star in the show and co-created the show. And I don't know if their friendship goes back to their childhoods, but they're definitely playing sort of their own childhood selves as part of this friendship. So there's something really fearless and bizarre about this. And you're right, Ronald, it might take a minute or two for it to work on you if you're watching it. But once you get past that initial conceit, that weirdness, I don't know what it is about. I keep trying to put my finger on why it works so well. What do you think, Steve? Why does them being adults somehow enrich the coming of age part? Is it because just seeing an adult's perspective filtered through, even though they are performing these roles, it sounds very wink wink, but it's not like Strangers with Candy or anything like that, which I enjoyed that show too, but that show was very arch and very satirical. These are genuine performances, like the acting chops. These are great child performances from these grown women. What is it about them being grown that makes it so rich? I mean, I think that the skill of the performances and the nostalgia maybe, but there's something going on here.
Really, it's kind of like the idea of watching an adult channel feelings that most adults that are watching this show have felt, you know what I mean? Like, or have experienced. Like, it's like watching someone who is playing younger, way younger, in this case, like 20 years younger. It's kind of like transportive to me. Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's like, you not that you see yourself in those actors or actresses, but you can see yourself in those situations. And I feel like, an adult watching an adult playing a teenager is kind of like it's definitely a take, and it takes a little adjusting maybe when the series starts. But I think it's just kind of like it's almost like permission to be able to watch this and be like, wow, like that's real, or that was real awkward. And I've felt that real awkwardness before when I was that age or in that situation that I experienced.
It's almost like that's what your memories are already. Like,
absolutely.
Your memories are in your memories. Your adult self is somehow like the person behind it, even though you were so different back then.
I think that's totally it, John. And I feel like I wouldn't be shocked, like, to hear, either of these co-creators or, like, even just experiences that people maybe have had, like, where you have dreams, or memories of, like you were just saying, like what of something that you remembered happening in middle school or high school, and like you don't. I mean, and I've experienced this. Like, when I see my friends from high school, when I have, I went to my reunion, or I see my buddy who has been my best friend since middle school, like. When I think about things that we experienced in those times in our lives, which are like some of the richest experience I've ever had, it's like I don't ever think of what I looked like at that age. Like most times,
it's hard to even remember.
Yeah, most times when I'm remembering these things, he looks like him and I look like me now, but I'm just describing what happened then. You know what I mean? So I think that idea is like is the take of where this show is going, and I think it works really well for that very reason, because I feel like in some ways that's a lot of people probably can relate to that, and those creators I'm sure probably I'm sure have experienced that. And Maya and Anna, like they have this this great unique friendship in the show, and I'd be curious to know if that exists in real life too, because their chemistry in this series is really what makes the series work. And I mean, the writing on the show is so good. I love season 1, and after being able to watch this first part of season 2, Jeff, definitely, it's definitely one of my favorite shows. I think that I have seen this year, probably for sure. And I think the first season was on my top list for the series, from TV series in 2019. But it's definitely cemented its place in like some of my current favorites in terms of like what is an ongoing series, and hopefully this the series keeps going on, because I think what it does best as a series is really being able to spread the ideas around to different characters. Like, Maya and Anna may be the leads, but I think the series does a really good job of being able to spend time with some of these secondary and tertiary kids that they come in contact with, or family members that they come in contact with, and you get to spend time with them and see kind of like what those characters are going through, so that you're not only relating to Maya and Anna. You're learning, in this season more about Gabe and Maya's mother, and and especially Anna's parents and things like that. You just get to spend time with these characters enough that they matter in some ways as much as Maya and Anna do to the story, but also as much as they do just in terms of as a viewer, you want to see more episodes, because they play off of each other so much and kind of dictate the next steps in our story. But I don't know. I really loved this show going in, and coming out of these first 7. It just, Erin and I both watched these together, and she loves the show too. And, we kind of were super, super excited to be able to binge those really quickly, which is also a problem when you can binge them that quickly, I guess. It's just that it's like, oh, damn it, now it's over. But I don't know. What did you think, Ronald? I mean, were you a fan of the first season, or where did you come into this with? What did you come into this with?
I love the first season, man. I think the tone of this one is a little more serious. It's tackling divorce, which was something that I was dealing with a little before I was in middle school, and was blamed as the catalyst for my behavior. Anything after that was like, you do, that was so weird to me. But really what it had to do with was I think the older I get, the more I'm able to find the similarities in people's experiences that more than differences. And I think that there's something about this show. You may not be able to relate to every piece of it, but the feelings, I used to think that people that were like Maya were like crazy, right? But there's something about people who feel all of it, people who feel all the emotions, all of it, that makes them the best partners, the best friends, the best, conversationalists. There's something about that intensity that we're almost taught to lose as we get older, and to, be stronger and be meaner and be, don't let these don't get into these circumstances that Maya, you could tell maybe she kind of maybe feels similarly now.
Well, she's maladaptive in that way, and it made me think a little bit of Davy on Never Have I Ever, in the sense that she's a kid with anger issues, and she's known around her school as kind of a freak. But that show is a much, just if you think about that vision of high school on Never Have I Ever, is a much more bright and funny and colorful and light world. And I would almost hate to see that show become more grounded and serious, because part of what it does so well is play this kind of, it's all from the perspective of somebody who's I don't know, there's just something upbeat about that show. And I think Pen 15 it's not like it goes in the other direction, because it's very upbeat and has some funny moments. And I find their friendship very life affirming, in the sense of, if you've had a best friend like that, or even if it's just something about finding the right people. You were talking about what an extreme persona Maya is, but I think Anna is a very funny character as well, because she is a little bit more centered and a little bit more normal, but you recognize that she gets something from Maya that she doesn't get from anybody else. And the way that they go into these flights of fancy, even though they play into sort of a sitcom structure of what are they into this week, it reminds me of being a teen or being a tween, when you would become suddenly obsessed with something. Like there's an episode this second season where they get into Wicca, and it's like it's like so believable and reminds me so much of girls from my middle school or people that I knew. I mean, there's that moment where people are playing with a Ouija board or where people are doing something. It's just that feeling. And there's always that sense of like, wait, is this real? Are we kind of freaking each other out? And you can, without even really lying to each other, the way the friends sort of build on this sense of mythology that they have in that episode where they have this, they may have powers, they may have something going on. It didn't seem farcical to me. That seemed so real because I remember a friend of mine and we read about, I was in 8th or 9th grade or something, and we read about lucid dreaming, which is where you control your dreams. And we were like, determined that we were going to meet up in our dream. Like we were like briefly for like a week or two. We were like we were trying it. Like, so where'd you go last night? And he was like, well, I flew and I met Marilyn Monroe. And it's like, and I kept trying to control my dreams, and then I was just like, I'm just not good at it. I just can't do it. But my friend said something about like, I saw you. I was at your house and I saw you, but you were like not really there. You were fading in and out. Maybe you were, and I was like, I was watching television till about midnight, and they were like, that's probably it. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, that explains it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that probably explains it. I wasn't really asleep, so if you saw me, I was kind of fading in and out of the dream
dozing
world.
off.
And it's like, I don't think I actually believed that, but I think for the purposes of us, for a couple weeks, it was that Ouija board feeling. And again, that's just an example of the kind of adolescent stuff this show does a great job of capturing. And I got to say, these two actresses, it's amazing what they're doing. I mean, I think they are actually good actresses. I looked at their IMDb's, and particularly Maya has done a lot of stuff. She's so annoying and so aggravating, but she's so real. And I think that the same can be said of Anna in a different way. But no, just totally believable, recognizable characters. So much so that it kind of messes with my head a little bit because this is a period piece. But now 20 years ago is 2000. So for my old brain, that hurts a little bit because there are times where I almost feel like it's an 80s period piece or a 90s period piece, but it's really kind of like 90s into 2000s. So it's kind of catching the end of the 90s. These kids have a hangover from the 90s, the way that the 90s kids had sort of a hangover from the 80s, So I think that makes it also kind of interesting. It's really like, remember the way It Follows takes place in a kind of like there's certain technology that was modern and advanced and certain technology that feels old. This show has the effect of kind of being timeless because it's it's a set in the year 2000 period piece. And yet it feels like all the classic coming of age stuff that I tend to think of as 80s or 90s stuff, even though that's just because I'm from that era. The coming of age could be, for Henry's generation, coming of age is going to be now. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's crazy to think of how that changes. But being a tween doesn't change that much. You're fucking confused and everything's scary. And if you've got a friend like these two have, it is a way to survive.
Yeah, it's solid, man. I just was wondering if it was going to keep the same pace, same sort of sense of humor, and it kind of exceeded it, man. Like the stakes were a lot higher in this, and the emotional sort of roller coaster that everybody was going on. I remember having these conversations when I was younger with people, and like somebody hurt my feelings, and feeling like tiles were coming off the walls and the building was, I was like, man, I'm never ever gonna get over this. and then you live your life, but that's the way that it feels next level devastating.
Oh no!
Everything feels like that. Yeah.
There's a character named Brant, I think is his name.
Brant
just won't shut up about fucking Brant. And the thing is, I was annoyed that she wouldn't shut up about him, but I was definitely, when I was crushing on somebody, I was that person. Like I would just talk to everybody I knew about them. Like, and they'd be like, "So does this person know you exist?" And it's like, they may soon.
At some point they'll know.
But I know what snacks they like. I know what shows they like. I know where they like to sit in this class or that class or whatever. And again, that's why I think of Never Have I Ever, because the sort of crush objects, those shows, that show feels honest about a certain kind of adolescent or teen experience too, but it is a much more sugar-coated world than the world of Pen 15. But they both play with that same idea of like, when you're that age, there is some crush object who kind of, maybe you're not this way, but if you are this way, it it fills your world. Like that is like everything you're doing in high school is built around like being around this person or seeming cool to this person or what's this person gonna think, you know?
Everything just feels like turned up all the time, you know, at that in both directions. Like it's dialed up to the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows, and you kind of see these two friends in some case throughout this whole first part of the second season go through that entire spectrum. And you know, in most cases they're going through it together, and when they're not, I think that's where, you know, you really are kind of feeling a lot of their real personal development is like kind of when they're forced to do some of these things alone. And that's where I think, like you said, John, their performances really dial in, and they're both just really impressive, and just, you know, they really kind of bring these characters like to be like favorites of mine. Like, you know, I really am interested in seeing more of Maya and Anna in this Pen 15 world. And, you know, it's just like you mentioned, like the crush thing, you know, like that's some of the stuff I love is like just these little like signature things that they do throughout the series, like Anna's crush on Alex, like, you know, that becomes a point throughout the beginning, the middle, and the end of this first part of the season where, you know, and even in the first season, you know, every time she sees this kid and like, you know, the song just kicks in and you got that slow-mo walk and it's that gaze. And that's a part of that, you know, the episode 3, the Vendi Vicani episode. You know, it's just the way they dial that in and out of the season. You know, you have these little like checkpoints with these characters of things that matter so much to them, and you're just seeing how often it changes. And you're talking about the course of, you're still in 7th grade. You know, these two seasons are both in the same grade. You know, they're dealing with this stuff over a matter of weeks, and you know, you're seeing the ups and downs of how much that changes over the course of a couple episodes even. And I think that's just what makes the show so effective. And it's just like, because in most cases, most people can find something to relate to, you know, when they went through this, you know, part of their lives. But I think it's some of those signature things that just really kind of dial into these characters. And, you know, I said earlier, like some of the stuff I really liked about this season, probably more so than the first, is like really getting to spend a little more time with characters like Gabe and like Sam.
Gabe. I was going to say Gabe in particular really pops, man.
Yeah.
That kid is so naturalistic. What's the actor's name? It's
I'm not sure.
I've got it right here. Gabe is Dylan Gage. And also the kid that plays what's his name?
Sam?
Well, Sam's good. Brady Allen as Brendan. That kid's got a funny, specific energy all his own.
Yeah.
Reminds me, there's a character that's a background character on Community. This guy named Garrett. He's like one of the more awkward, sort of nerdy characters on that show, and they give that character more and more of a backstory as it goes on. You know, you know, I like when people cast sort of. I mean, no offense to these young actors, they're all quite good and they're all quite likable. But I like when someone casts someone who's a little awkward or a little different and lets them just exist. It really helps the older women's performances that these kids look like kids next to them. I mean, they really are kids. Yeah. And I will say there are times where I forget what's happening and I bought into Maya and Anna as kids. But then there's the moments where it comes to your mind again, where there's going to be a kiss or there's going to be some physical contact. And I think the way they shoot it and the way they handle it is, it's about as tasteful as it can be for a show that is extremely frank about like sexual development and stuff. But it's, I don't know, there's something so funny about, like, describing it, it almost would sound perverse to somebody, you know, or unpleasant, or like it's going to be gross out comedy or something like that. But it's totally
it's the opposite. Yeah.
It's really, it's so smart. It is real. I mean, that's as we're talking about it, I'm remembering like I was so impressed with so many little moments and turns. Even the divorce you mentioned, Ronald, it's played like around the edges of the story, and we can see what's happening. Anna, the character whose parents are in this separation phase, we see what's happening more than she does, and it's so painful and so awkward. And they could almost have kept it in that liminal stage between all these things, but as that storyline advances, that was some of the most uncomfortable stuff for me, like particularly the way the dad is trying to play that scenario. It's just like, it's tough to watch because both these parents are trying to do right by their kids, but you see the ways that the parents are fucking up as much as the kids are. And it's, you know, I think the most solid parent, maybe you guys will agree, is Maya's mom. She's awesome.
For sure.
Yeah, who seems to be played by Maya's actual mom, right?
Yeah, it is.
Man, the bond that Kathy and who's played by Melora Walters,
Yes,
and that's Anna's mom and Maya's mom. Man, their friendship is really funny.
Oh, the two moms?
Yeah, the two
when
moms.
they're around each other, it's great. Yeah,
it's so good, man. But you're right. The standout, Maya's mom is out of this world good, man. It's like a energy that she has that's just, I don't know.
There's a scene in the tub where she gives Maya sort of a pep talk kind of moment.
Oh man,
that I thought was one of the most beautiful
good.
parenting moments I've seen on screen in a while.
There's like, I just remember that stage when you have a friend that your parents are like, what is this energy that they're bringing? Where did all this come from? And you just say things that you normally wouldn't say and do things that you normally wouldn't do. And that it was really well depicted. I just love the way that it played out.
You know, I think your parents worry less about you, just a little bit, when they see you have a friend like that.
Yes.
When they're like,
I
here's
agree.
a friend, and maybe they are going to get into trouble, and maybe they're going to do something stupid, but chances are they're going to be doing something weird that's the two of them off in their little world. And I think as a parent, like I sometimes think about with Henry, you know, with this COVID thing has kind of separated him from that type of interaction with a lot of his friends. And I think about the effects of that. And at this age, how important that is to have somebody that you can kind of like walk around and do childish stuff with, but also step into more mature stages of life with, and you know, maybe have a rough separation or have things that tear you apart. You were alluding to it, Steve. There's a play in this season where the two girls end up on either side of it. One of them is an actor in it, and the other is on the tech side. And I thought that was hilarious, but also, it reminds me of where things are at in like the end of the last couple of seasons of Stranger Things. They really point out how like fragile this bond between the characters is. And I think the nature of this kind of story is, you've got to at least pose the threat of what if these two people grow apart. But that whole scene, there's a scene where the tech crew and the acting crew are like walking down the hall together, and that was so good. I mean, that just was that was almost like a climax of sorts for some of these themes. Seeing them find their new niche, and like how does that then affect what they have? Really well done. I really wonder what their plans are for this show. It almost seems like they would have maybe an end point in mind, especially because these younger supporting actors, they're not going to look that young for long.
Right.
Yeah, I hope that they have I want it to last for a couple more seasons, but man, I love watching them. But I don't want it to kind of get too crazy.
Yeah, you don't want them to lose this tone. This tone is sort of when you mentioned like Wonder Years, that's a great example of like that feels like a very true coming of age story, and that feels like an extremely polished, nostalgic view compared to the way some of the scenes in this play out. And I do think the average viewer might have that moment of like real discomfort getting used to the way this feels, because like Maya in particular is a real, you know, she's an acquired taste as a character. But I think even as a viewer of this show, you kind of become more enamored of her once you see just that she's constantly dealing with stuff on this level. Like she's really thinking about it. She's really trying. And she also has this wild side to her. Like she just goes off sometimes, which again feels really true to that age.
I love that. I love that part of their friendship, though. Like just the zaniness, like just how like silly. Like you mentioned the whole. The Wicca scene earlier, and like we were texting about that while we were watching it. But
when they're in like the greenhouse at school,
that was scary.
Because you know, if you were one of those other kids, like you would be like, that would have been a rumor at my school that these two girls were doing witchcraft in the greenhouse.
That's legendary.
That's the kind of shit you would hear about, right? Yeah.
And they got possessed and just started yelling. I would have told the whole story. Like,
well, I mean, I think it's just like you know,
their chants. I don't know where they were getting those chants they were doing.
You know, they're just channeling it. You know. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like one of the things that I kept like thinking about watching it is just that, you know, of all these things that kind of come into their orbit, whether it's the play or the pool party they go to, or even when a third best friend gets introduced into the equation, Becca, like
Mora.
Oh, Mara. Sorry, yeah, Mara. There's just like, even amongst these things, and like you see how it encroaches on their friendship, and there's always like still, even when they're at times of like tension, between the two of them, there's just those cracks where they can't help but be the best friend for one another that they've always been and will be for, the show's run, I'm sure. But like, the moment when they go to the sleepover and like she brings her there in like a duffel bag, like that shit is fucking hilarious. And like they can't help but be silly
as
together.
People for doing that, because that's the kind of shit I might have done.
Absolutely.
That I would have thought was really funny, and I might have gotten that same reaction of like people going, "You're so random." People say that, "You're so random, you're so weird," and it's like that wasn't the reaction I was going for. But but me and my friend, we know what we were trying to do. No, that scene was hilarious, and I think that's a great example, Steve. I thought at that moment too, I was relieved to see the two of them on the same page, even though the storyline around that shows how there's a wedge being driven. Right. Like Mara really is an interesting person because she's sort of like this toxic friend, but at the same time, she's a kid too who's trying to find her way into something else. So you can't hate Mara, but you do from the perspective of Maya and Anna's friendship. You can see her as like this, like interloper,
right?
Right. She represents something bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the show. I love those characters. I'm anxiously awaiting to see the back end of this season. But
what scene really hit me hard was Sam sort of being around the boys, and that now we're aging into this stage where boys say terrible shit about girls. Yep. And how he kind of is willing to do that up to a point. I felt that really made me sick in my stomach, because even if it's not the gender thing, just anytime you find yourself sort of being compelled to kind of sell out one of your friends for a laugh, there's a lot of social pressure in high school and in younger years too, to sort of like, you can redefine yourself around this new group, but only if you disavow somebody. And again, never have I ever has dealt with that same idea of like your core group of friends. What do they think of you when you start, changing your social options? Yeah. It's so delicate.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like Sam. I mean, Sam fucked up, but
his heart. He
made a mistake.
He had to fuck up.
Yeah,
he had to fuck up to know that he didn't
come back
like
around
that.
to it.
Right.
Yeah, totally. That what you just said is exactly it. No, I like that with his characterization, and I definitely want to see where that goes. With Sam and Maya, I like how they kind of been playing with that out. Again, one of those things that kind of like bring in and out of the season. Small doses here and there. It's not like It's not like too much or heavy-handed. It's just like enough that it's like, oh yeah, they probably are supposed to be together in some way. You know what I mean? Like,
right. They have a friendship that goes back too. And I think that's the thing. Yeah. But man, the way puberty can mess up those like childhood things. It's so sad. It's true. It's so sad. You start hurting people's feelings for real, and it's you can't say backsies anymore.
Dude,
it's a different thing.
I gotta say, the one of the scenes that Aaron and I were dying, just one-off scenes here. It's actually in this episode 7, the finale, I guess, of this first part. I think Steven is the stage crew.
Yeah, I liked him
leader.
a lot.
He's like a freshman, I guess, in high school or whatever.
Mm-hmm. The older guy.
Yeah, when they're sitting in Anna's dad's new convertible, and somebody makes a comment, "Look at all the stars," and he says they're all dead.
Yes.
I was laughing for a solid like 3 minutes. I actually had to stop it because I was like, "This is fucking so stupid, so funny." His whole character
cracked me up, man.
His whole character of how like just like.
He's
cool.
like the young guy. Yeah,
and he's like educated, and he knows about cinema.
He's got the flask.
He's so
and he's like
kind of,
chill. He's like, you'd go do your thing. What does he call her? He calls her something like she's a badass or whatever. No, but I liked him so much.
Calls her last name. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but there was something so cool about his throughout that whole scene. He was being really cool. I mean, like honestly though, he was being cool with her. Like he was not being like a dick to her, and he was not being like toxic. Anything with her. It was so even though he might be we can see he's a little bit of a poser. He's a really good guy, like he seems like, I don't know, I thought when he's like, why don't you tell him, when she's like, going over to him saying, I think you should tell everybody we need to move on when there's a crew debate that's happening on the tech side before the play. And he's like, why don't you tell him? Like, I thought that was like, wow, I don't even know that I would have the presence of mind sometimes to remember, like, if someone comes to you like that, you should enable them rather than saying, you're right, this would be good coming from me, you know. But no, that he was very good. But you're right. You have to laugh because all that stuff. The thing is, everything they care about is stupid and meaningless, and you know this as an adult. You know, like. But at the same time, you also know there's nothing more real to this day than the shit you were thinking about. That do I fit in? Who are my people? What's my thing?
So much.
I mean, I'm 47 and I still have those questions. I think
The
I've been
comment
with you
about,
guys.
The thing he said about like Final Destination being like, you don't know cinema if you. It was so much that he said that was like cracking me up.
He's like, he says that about Final Destination, then he says something about somebody being Cameronian.
Yeah. No, he says to her that he would describe her as being like that. Yes, being like James Cameron, like as a compliment to how she came in and became the stage director or whatever.
When she like and I think when she drops the glitter, like that was Cameronian.
Yeah.
God, man, he was funny as hell, man.
So good, dude.
God,
late season MVP right there, Steve.
Yeah. No, I hope he comes
funny.
back. I think that's a great.
We'll see
like,
more of him. I hope
he's a good match for her, actually. Like that, you know. Again, I love the older guy who's 14. You know, like that's hilarious.
He's lived so much more in that extra year and a half. He's experienced so much more cinema. Like the Final Destination movie. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, no, totally. This comes out next week on Hulu. I mean, obviously, we here at Movie all really enjoyed it / loved it. I'll say I loved it. I highly recommend it. If you've seen season 1, you know, definitely check it out next week. If you want to rewatch it or need to catch up, you got a week to do so. There's a bit of a refresher at the beginning of the season, like John was mentioning, but you know, that said, it's still just like a nice little, you can jump right in and get right back into line with these characters and see what's going on.
Because you still have this person inside you. I mean, almost anybody listening to this, I guarantee you that inner 12-year-old has never fully gone away, you know, so that's who this show is for. And it really, it's almost painful at times, but I think the fact that adds up to something heartwarming in a way is you know, it's a testament to the quality of this thing. Like I even looked up the cinematographer to see what else they've done, and it wasn't a lot of other stuff that wasn't maybe associated with the same creators. But I do think the look and feel of this show is very accomplished, and that's another thing that gives it's got like a cinematic feel to it. Yeah, that takes it out of a sort of sitcom zone almost entirely.
I think it's also, isn't it Lonely Island production?
They're involved.
Yeah. I saw them on the production team, but. Yeah,
I think at the end, Odenkirk's template. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different people, like production houses that come up real quickly if you look at the logos at the end. I might be wrong about that, but definitely Lonely Island. It's like Lonely Island Classics is what it's called, and I think that's their.
That looks like the Sony Classics logo. Yeah. So comes out next week on Hulu. I think it's worth if you're not on Hulu, it's worth a subscription in my opinion. Just get it, watch the first second season, part 1, and. Definitely have some fun with Pen 15. And after you watch it, maybe if you guys remember the MASH game, I mean, I saw that on the show, and I was like, wow, that takes me back.
Oh, man.
Holy shit.
I never knew how to do that, but there was always some girl who did know how to do the MASH game. Dude. And so that increased the power. Wow. Like, I was in awe of women from a young age because not only were they beautiful and alluring, but they also knew how to do shit like that. And they would like run some numbers and then come back to you and say who you were going to marry and how old you were going to be when you died or what kind of car you were going to drive or whatever. And all that from just what color you liked and what your favorite animal was or whatever, God, you know. So I was like, man, these gals are amazing.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You guys have anything else you want to throw in there for this recap review?
I think that's it for me.
I'm good.
Find us at movieshmovie.com, facebook.com/movieschmovie, and wherever you subscribe to the podcast, because I hope you're subscribing to this podcast if you're listening. Even if you just follow us on Facebook, you know what? Just like leave some comments, share it, do whatever there. Mm-hmm. But if you're on Apple Podcasts specifically, a rating, review, always appreciate it. we definitely.
You could just leave a quick review. You could say whether we're loaded or not loaded.
Yeah.
Was that what they were saying on Pin 15?
Yeah,
they were
loaded.
they were at the thrift store making fun of the clothes.
So funny. Oh my god. Yeah. So why don't you just do that? That's how we'll know you listen to this episode.
If you like this, we'll say we're loaded. If you don't like this, you could say not loaded. In
Not
fact,
loaded and loaded.
don't save that review. In fact, that would be a pretty shitty thing to do. If right now you felt motivated just to say you don't like us,
right.
but that would be very middle school as well. So
Totes middle school, but
totes
yeah,
mids.
leave a review if you can, rating, whatever you want to do. We'd appreciate it. But we'll be back hopefully next week with a new podcast episode. We're not sure what it's going to be quite yet, but we're all excited to get these out weekly now that we've been doing this basically since COVID started.
I know.
We've been keeping it strong. We may have had a little blip here and there, but for the most part, it's been pretty weekly, which has been a lot of fun. And again, thanks to Hulu for getting us access to the first part of Season 2 of Pen 15. And again, if you're interested, streams next Friday, September 18th. All 7 episodes are available on Hulu. That's it for Movie Smoothie episode 268. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.
Fools.